Hi, this is Artie Belshner. I'm here to discuss password security and look at some of the ways we can make passwords more secure, such as by using tools such as password managers, security tokens, and two-factor authentication. I'm going to start off the presentation, just an agenda here, looking at what is password security and why is it important, and what are some of the tools we can use to help make more secure passwords. Password managers, security tokens, two-factor authentication, and password strength. Then we're going to go look at some threats to password security, how businesses should evaluate their password policy, or if they should even have one, and then finally look at some questions on passwords that, for people to think about. Over on the right-hand side, you can see a list of top 20 most common passwords, and I hope nobody is using these passwords for their personal accounts, Xavier accounts, or any online shopping accounts. As you can see, you have numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, password, football, QWERTY, just a number of easily guessed words that hackers would love for your password to be. Basically, your passwords are there to protect your personal information. When you log into your Google account or to an Amazon account, your password is there to keep people from making unauthorized purchases, getting your information, stealing your identity. We'll look a little bit more detail later how some passwords get exposed, but one way is someone's out to get you. So someone that has knowledge about you guesses your password. Second way is a brute force attack where basically they run through the list of the top 20 most common passwords, and hopefully you don't have one of those because that makes their job very easy. And third is data breaches, where passwords to personal information can be exposed. Strong passwords are essential, and recommendations include 80 bits in length. We'll go more into the recommendations later. 80 bits is really a 12-character password with a combination of different types of characters. And also, recommendations are for unique passwords for each site or service. So this is really essential because if you're using the same password for Gmail and Amazon and your Target online account, any other in your Facebook account, person guesses your Facebook account or Facebook is breached, then all of a sudden they can get your email address and password to a number of different sites and do a lot more damage. One downside of this is it's really difficult to remember all of the different passwords that you would have for each and every site. One potential solution to help you manage all of these different passwords is a password manager. Have a couple of logos over on the side for Dashlane and LastPass. These are services that actually generate strong passwords and fill out web forms for you. What is a great strength about this is it provides you a unique, strong password for each site or surface, and you as a user don't have to remember it. The actual application remembers the password and fills it in whenever you go back to that site. It's way more secure than a handwritten list. And one thing that stood out to me was in our readings this week where the case from Harvard Business Review said 28.5% of millennials keep their passwords written down in plain sight. This is obviously not a great policy to have, especially if you run into something and someone gets a hold of that list of passwords. They could do a significant amount of damage. Password Manager is much more secure than that. The other thing I really like about those is that it populates the web forms automatically for you. So it can actually fill in your name, your address, shipping information if you're going on Amazon, if you don't have it set to remember, or if you go to a new site, it will create a password there for you and fill out the information based on what you filled out in the past. Limitations. Password managers are susceptible to data breaches. In 2015, actually, LastPass was hacked. Fortunately, they didn't get access to users' password vaults, but they did get access to user email addresses and password reminders, which, while difficult, could have led to some vaults being hacked. Another limitation would be you could be locked out of your account if you forget that one master password. One great thing is, though, that if you have one master password that is a strong password, it's the only one you need to remember. So make that password strong and don't forget it. Next item I want to look at is security tokens. A lot of people are familiar with these. In my job, I actually have a security token for accessing our company's network remotely. it's a form of two-factor authentication, and it's usually a physical item. Pictured, I have the key fob. I've also seen the smart cards from SecurID. One strength of two-factor authentication is that it provides additional steps to authenticate your access. So a person puts in their username and password, and then it also asks them to put in a SecurID token or a hard token, which changes on a 60-second basis. So you actually have to physically have that token with you to be able to access your services. Additionally, in addition to that, there's usually a user-defined PIN number, which adds another layer of security, because if you lose that token, no one can access your account. One, because it doesn't have any identifiable information that it belongs to your user account, and two, you actually have to know the PIN number to put in along with it which company it goes to access that data. Limitations: one, it is a physical item. It can be lost. It's cumbersome, can be inconvenient. If you have your key fob on your car keys and you take your car to the shop and then you need to get on the network later in the day, you don't have your key fob. So it's inconvenient. You may have to call the IT help desk to get a one-time token or just not get on at all. Additionally, businesses do incur an additional cost for these tokens to provide the service. So that would be another limitation of the security tokens. A third password security issue or tool is two-factor authentication. While RSA tokens, SecurID tokens are a form of two-factor authentication, there are a number of other types. One that most people are probably familiar with is you go to the Kroger gas station or any gas station and swipe your credit card, and it asks you to input your zip code to process the billing. So basically, it's adding a second level of security to access the site or the service. In the case of the credit card, it's you have the physical credit card, and then you also have the data point knowing that which zip code that credit card bill goes to. And it's basically uses 2 of 3 points unique to the individual: something they know, something they possess, or something that they are. So Apple iPhones use a two-factor authentication on passwords. So it's either a password you put in, or you can use the Touch ID. The iPhone X is using biometric face scanning technology. So that's really something that a person is. A strength of two-factor authentication is it's more secure than just a simple password. If you have two-factor authentication, your password's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but you have a retinal scan to get into the building, it's going to be a lot harder for someone to fake that. They could guess your password, but still would be denied access because they can't pass the biometric testing. Also, it's an established technology. Two-factor authentication is actually very old. Like I said, we've been using it as, credit cards, PIN numbers, things of that nature for a long time. Limitations: it can be inconvenient. It can take more time to log into the services that you want to use. It can take additional time at the gas station where you're putting in your zip code. And it's also still susceptible to cyber attacks. Matter of fact, RSA was breached in 2011 through a phishing attack where the users basically sent an Excel file to companies and got access through a backdoor in Adobe to RSA's serial numbers and tokens. So there are still people trying to attack and break through two-factor authentication. Another way you can protect your passwords is by creating strong passwords. Most people create passwords using a combination of letters and numbers. Recommendations really recommend at least 12 character passwords with uppercase, lowercase, letters, numbers, and symbols. Also, you want to use unique passwords for each site to make sure that if your Facebook password is compromised somehow through a data breach, your Amazon account is still intact, or your credit card accounts are still intact. One tip that I found in an article was to think of a phrase, then basically break that phrase into initials and numbers using proper punctuation. So for the example I wrote down here is, I hope Xavier wins the 2018 NCAA March Madness, becomes this long string of characters that really doesn't make a whole lot of sense and probably would be pretty difficult to guess. Another option is to use a password generator and password manager to store your passwords and reduce the intellectual strain to remember multiple passwords for all the different accounts that you have. So now I'm going to look at some threats to password security. Basically, first threat is someone who has knowledge of your passwords or your life. So if you're using, I think back many years ago when Paris Hilton was hacked, she was using the name of her dog as her password. So someone basically went in and guessed and got into her personal information. So a person with knowledge of habits, passwords, tendencies, or if you're just using weak passwords, someone could be able to guess that. If you're using a spouse's name, a friend's name, a pet's name, probably better to revisit those passwords. Another area is brute force attacks, attack where a computer program or a hacker tries repeatedly to guess your passwords. In some research I did, I found that basically an 80-bit password, which is 12 characters, mixed letters, numbers, takes years longer to crack than a 30-bit password. So one way to keep your password strong. Another incentive to keep your password strong. Finally, a data breach, when companies are attacked and data gets out. Sometimes those passwords to accounts are gained, and if you're using that same password on multiple accounts with that same email address, you could have other accounts in jeopardy. Finally, phishing and social engineering. So social engineering is someone calls and states a legitimate business case even though they have no association with your business. Someone calls posing as IT saying, hey, I need your password to get remote access to your machine, and you give them your user account details without a second thought. Phishing is usually done through email, very sophisticated, where they're actually getting better, where people are sending out emails to try to trick you into clicking on some kind of document, clicking on a link that will take you out to a web form that looks legitimate, looks like your banking information, looks like your credit card company, and you put in your information and it goes directly to into the hands of the phishers. So business considerations for passwords. One, most businesses I've been at have employed and enforced a password policy. The strength of the passwords they require varies. I would probably recommend at my current company that they require a little bit stronger password. They do have them changed frequently, though, and do not allow repeated passwords or repeated characters. So that is one area. Helps that the length is a little bit shorter, but we change them often, and they're not repeated for 6 of your previous 6 passwords. Another issue is to have them changed at regular intervals, because if someone gains access to those passwords, you want to make sure that they're not indefinitely available to be utilized to access the network. And don't allow repeated passwords. So don't allow someone to put in 1 2 3 4 5 6 A B C D E F 1 2 3 4 5 6 as 3 consecutive passwords, just because that allows someone to guess more easily what those passwords may be. And then finally, consider employing two-factor authentication to further secure access to the company assets. I know I do this in my current job when I am accessing the network remotely, but not necessarily when I'm in the building. I guess the two-factor authentication there is I'm actually plugged into the company's network. And a couple questions to reflect on password policies. Does your company follow a password policy? If so, how secure do you think it is? And then secondly, I was wanting to take a pulse on who personally uses a password manager. If you use a password manager, do you like it? And if not, do you use the same password for multiple sites? Because that can open you up to some serious consequences if one of those sites is breached. Thank you all for listening. Appreciate you listening to the presentation and look forward to your feedback. Thanks.